Commissioners, feel free to start the meeting. If everyone's ready, we can go ahead and start the meeting.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will start with our invocation. Mr. Administrator, if you would please proceed when you're ready.
Pray with me. Father, we ask your blessing and your presence in this meeting. We ask that you bless each and every person in attendance. We ask that you give us all patience and deliberation as we go about the business of the county. We ask this in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
Amen. Please stand for the pledge. Yeah, it's better. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here.
That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
I move that we approve today's agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of today's agenda. So any changes, additions, or deletions? Mr. Counselor, I believe you have something that has come up that needs to be added to our meeting today.
Yes, Commissioner.
Oh, your mic. There you go.
Yes, Commissioner. Respectfully would request two changes to the agenda. The simpler one would be to remove legal from the executive session. The gentleman who needs to join us for that is not available and should be available next week, most likely. So to remove legal. And then the second would be to add Resolution 2021-46. This is something that has just come up related to the COP issuance. UMB Bank requires basically a designation of representatives, some people who are authorized to sign on behalf of the county. And it's come to our attention that currently there's no one authorized. Everyone who was authorized is no longer an employee of the county. And there are outstanding bills that are due and properly need to be paid that were not paid before the end of the year, and for which some interest and penalties are getting ready to attach if we don't get this passed. So this would just simply designate authorized representatives for the county. It's a ministerial change from people who were authorized last year to people who were authorized this year. And the 5 people that we've listed are the 3 of you, Mr. Salisbury, and the county clerk, Ms. Baldwin. And that is at their request based on the documents. So I've got these if you want to look at it, but I would request that we add 2021-46 to the agenda.
Would anybody care to make a motion to amend our agenda to add 2021-46 and for the deletion of legal under executive?
I'll make the motion to remove legal from executive session and add resolution 2021-46.
Motion has been made to amend the agenda as published under the lines just mentioned. Discussion. No, I think that adding that one item certainly, I think, is qualified under our sunshine law restrictions as something that is of an urgent nature that cannot wait. With that, if you'd like to close, Commissioner Thompson,
Close?
please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
That brings us back to the underlying motion for the approval of the agenda as amended. That would be Commissioner Carpenter's motion. Are there any other additions, deletions, or any other either amendments or discussion related to the agenda today? Seeing none, Commissioner Carpenter, if you'd like to close.
Thank you. I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes?
That brings us to meetings schedule. We don't have one. It's, I think, still to be announced. Mr. Administrator, does that sound?
We do not have a meeting scheduled at this time. Next week, as is this week, is a short week. We will likely have a meeting next week, and we will certainly post it within the regulations for a proper announcement. It will obviously likely take place later in the week.
And just to point out, Monday is a holiday when the offices will be closed, just so everybody who's listening knows that we will not be open for business on any other level, but that also necessitates changing what had been our Monday meetings to another day of the week. And quite honestly, lately, we've not been doing the Monday thing anyway. But we will be posting that as soon as we come up with our date, sometime middle to end of next week, I suspect. Honorary resolutions, there are none listed. Public hearings, there are none listed. That brings us to our commission session. First two items are companion items, 2021-43, 2021-44. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-43 and 44 both relate to the approval of the subdivision known as Stark Fields. I will defer to the planning and zoning folks for further comment.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. I've got the property pulled up on the screen. This is a preliminary and final plat for a subdivision called Stark Fields. You can see the overall property is highlighted in green. Here, it's roughly 200 acres. Mr. Johnson, the applicant, is proposing to subdivide the southern portion, approximately 60 acres, into 3 20-acre parcels with the intention to sell those lots. This is only a preliminary and final plat because each lot is at least 20 acres, which will allow it to keep the agricultural zoning. This property is located within the urban services tier of the county, which allows a 10-plus acre lot. Obviously, we're meeting that requirement with each lot being 20-plus acres. The applicant has received all their outside agency approvals, including approval from the Highway Department and the Water District. We did not require comments from the Public Health Center on septic systems, as each lot is larger than 20 acres. There is a small blue line stream on the southeast corner of lot number 3. We will place a 75-foot setback from the center line of that stream, and that'll be noted on the plat. Basically, they just cannot build any structures within that 75 feet. We did not receive any opposition either leading up to or during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commissioners voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the preliminary and final plat with the 3 conditions you can see in Exhibit A. 2 of those conditions, Condition 1 and Condition number 2, have already been taken care of by the applicant, and Condition number 3 are just some minor changes to the recording copy of the final plat. Mr. Johnson is in attendance today, and I would be happy, as well as Mr. Johnson would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion for related to 2021 and 2021-43 and 2021-44?
Commissioner, could I get clarification? Can we move to do both at the same time? Is that
Yes,
That
that's...
standard procedure?
Yeah, on the zoning type issues,
Yeah.
where they're all kind of on the same issue, but there's some legal requirements that mean different votes have to be taken, but they're essentially the same issue.
Okay, so one motion works. Very good.
One motion
I
should
will
work.
make the motion for 44 and 45.
Thank
that we
you.
passed.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-43, 2021-44. Discussion. Something I neglected to mention at the top of the meeting is that certainly we welcome citizen comments and other comments. We have a podium right there for citizens or anyone else who cares to comment. Please make sure the button glows green and identify yourself. And certainly we here at the meeting need to make sure we identify ourselves for the audio recordings and that we speak clearly because we're speaking through masks. So please try to speak as clearly as possible. And then lastly, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. On these votes, as presiding commissioner under the new Constitution, I do not cast a vote except under specific circumstances. Chief of them is an event of a tie. So my not voting should not be construed as either a positive or a negative on the issue at hand. It's just the constitutional realities of the office. With that, we have a motion on the table, a discussion from the commission. Any questions? Also, the applicant, if the applicant cares to speak, they are certainly free to do so. It is not a requirement, but I certainly want to make sure that we have afforded that opportunity to anybody who comes before the commission seeking help on an issue like this. So would the applicant care to comment? Very well. The applicant does not care to comment. Any comments from anyone else in the room? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
It passes. Thank you. That brings us to 2021-45. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-45 is to approve the official Clay County zoning map for 2020. Again, defer to planning and zoning for further comment.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is our yearly update of the zoning map. This comes before the County Commission once a year, and it reflects all the rezonings or annexations, the rezonings that were approved by the County Commission in 2020, and then any annexations that were done by the cities in Clay County. So no changes other than what was approved by the County Commission. As I stated, this comes before the commission once a year, and this allows planning and zoning staff to publish the new zoning map on our website, and then we post a hard copy on the wall in the planning and zoning department. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with a 6-0 vote, and we did not receive any opposition for this case, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you. Is there a motion related to 2021-45?
I'll make the motion to approve 2021-45.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-45. Discussion. Mr. Jones, it's my understanding, and I think you were very clear, but just to restate it, this is not something that required discretionary actions on the part of staff or the planning and zoning, because this is just essentially taking the actions of the county in the past, in the most recent year, and incorporating them into the map. Is that so? It's fairly routine, and as you pointed out, it's an annual procedure that we do every year.
It is, sir, and just to explain it a little further, the areas that you see in color are the unincorporated areas. The areas in gray are within the city. So my office has jurisdiction over the areas that are noted in color, and the different colors are the different zonings. But yes, there is no discretion. This is just what was approved by the County Commission last year.
Discussion. Any questions or comments? Anything from any of the other people present here? I see no further comments. With that, I'll go to Commissioner Thompson to close.
I close?
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to 2021-42. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-42 is to approve the change order number 2 for the North Home Avenue Bridge replacement a reduction of the cost of work done by Miles Excavating Company. I would defer to Highway for any further comments, if there are.
Please proceed. Oh, you can go right ahead.
Good morning, Commission. This is Miles Excavation that was turned around doing the project on North Home Bridge, Home Road Bridge. And they didn't spend the anticipated monies for the stabilization control and the ditching control. So they gave us, you know, a little bit of our monies back. So they anticipated not to spend that much when they turned around and put all that down. So we got to say refund.
Oh, please go ahead and identify yourself also for the recording.
Apologize, Carl Walters with Clay County.
Thank you. Is there, and by the way, when I come to these things, just saying, as far as commissioners go, I'm asking for a motion related to 2021-42. That does not preclude, obviously, if any commissioners have any questions before they would like to make that motion from asking them. I didn't want that to somehow be understood that questions were not allowed. They certainly are in order almost any time. So are there any further questions? And if not, is there a motion on 2021-42?
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll move that we vote to pass on 2021-42.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-42. Discussion. Commissioner Thompson, did you have any questions or comments you'd like to make?
No, I don't, thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, I will go to Commissioner Carpenter to close or to make any further comment.
I close. Thanks.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Thank you. That brings us to 2021 Ordinance 01. Mr. Administrator?
Point of order, do you wish to do something about 2021-46 before you do the ordinance?
It doesn't matter. I just put it at the end because it was
Okay.
added there. I'm sorry. That's a question that I hadn't really thought about, but yes, it's not necessary. We can intersperse ordinance and regular resolutions. There's no rule on that I'm aware of.
Then we'll do the ordinance.
Thank you.
And the ordinance, 2021 Ordinance 01, is to approve the ordinance modifications made earlier by the commission, suggested earlier by the commission.
Thank you. I will go ahead because it's one that I've been introducing, so I'll go ahead and make the motion on 2021 Ordinance 1, and I will talk about it a little bit. We talked about it last week, and we've had this under discussion a couple of times, so I don't want to necessarily belabor it too much, but certainly when we're talking about ordinance change, we should make sure that everybody has the opportunity to discuss that. I'm sorry, did I already make that motion, Mr. Counselor? No, I did not, did I?
I don't think we've got a motion yet.
Good. I didn't think so. I want to make sure I didn't get ahead of myself. I'm going to walk through it real quick, and then I will make my motion. The first section, and by the way, for those looking at it, maybe not familiar with the notation system, the language that is in brackets will be deleted. Language that is in bold is added language, is new language, and that's so you can tell what the alterations are. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to staff for doing a number of technical corrections that came up last time, including straightening out some of the numbering systems so that it reads a bit more succinctly and it's more able to navigate through it. The first section that is being deleted essentially is the requirement that we have 7 p.m. first Thursday of the month meetings. While I like the idea of certainly having time for the public to comment, that seemed far too restrictive, and it seemed much better plan to roll that into our regular meetings. So I've deleted that in favor of making sure that we have added permanently in the agenda the comment by citizens on non-agenda items, as well as commissioners, office holders, and other interested parties. So it deletes that language. Under A, under the new A, it refers to going to 4 meetings a month, 2 of those being in the evenings. The idea is to make the government more accessible. One of the problems with the language deleted was it specified 7 p.m. I think that is a time that may not be overly convenient for a lot of citizens, and certainly it makes it difficult to have staff leave and then come back. My recommendation would be, and this leaves it open so we can certainly work with this, it gives enough latitude. I would recommend we look at a 6 p.m. meeting if we're going to be doing that. I like the idea of some evening and some daytime meetings. I think that gives the maximum opportunity for citizens to be able to comment. I would further suggest that as we do our discussions, we look at a particular day of the week and have that our meeting day. For instance, Thursday. Today is Thursday, so we would have a day meeting and then the next week an evening meeting and alternate. The hope is, and I will explain it as we go on, but the hope is that if we have what would be our work sessions at our daytime meetings, that would be when we would take care of a lot of the more detailed and more cumbersome work. The business sessions, hopefully, which would be the evening sessions, would be a bit more brief because we've already gone through a lot of the procedural things, and there would be a number of things on the consent agenda. So the hope is that by doing it that way, we could have our evening meetings being having less time on some of the procedural matters, and making sure that we were making our votes as a commission on those more expeditiously, and also making sure that there was enough time to where we weren't abusing the patience of our citizens who showed up to comment. So that is what I'm kind of contemplating. The work sessions would be informal. There would be no votes taken except under specific circumstances, certainly procedural votes like adopting the minutes. But for the most part, when we deal with issues, those issues would be dealt with, and then the vote would be procedural to put them on the business session. That allows a couple of things. That allows a 2-week process, a two-step process for commission and for the public to study the issue at hand and to come up with any recommendations or comments. I would further contemplate that this would allow time for commissioners after a work session to perhaps construct an amendment to an issue in front of us and allow that to be possibly even published on the agenda for the next meeting so that everybody knows where we plan to go and how we plan to proceed. That would not eliminate any spontaneous amendments that we might do during the course of discussion, but I think it gives the added opportunity for a commissioner to make a suggestion and to have that suggestion in the public domain prior to us meeting and taking that up. I think that's a positive step forward. Number C talks about our business sessions. I would contemplate those being the evening meetings and those being a little bit more brief than the work sessions because we've already had a good deal of the discussion. And then those would be, there would be nothing on there with the exception of emergencies that we would be voting on that had not already been heard at a work session. So the idea is to give 2 possible opportunities for citizens in an open meeting to comment on issues by and large. There'll be emergency things and things come up, but for the most part, those will have the opportunity for 2 comments occasions from citizens at the minimum. It also creates, or I should say, it kind of codifies combined sessions. There will be occasions, which I suspect would be relatively rare, where we might need to combine those sessions, either for to be able to move more quickly, or one thing that comes to mind is in December when we have the Christmas holidays. It might be easier, and citizens may not be as interested in attending those meetings, so that we can make sure that is convenient. Under executive sessions, one of the important things that's going on here is there will be an agenda circulated within the commission from county council and also obviously to the county administrator, outlining the specifics. In today's meeting, we had a heading noticed up for our executive sessions. in the past, there was an opportunity, there was the chance that someone might begin a discussion on something that was not floated to the other commissioners first. This, I think, reduces the idea, two things. It reduces the ability of a commissioner to be blindsided during an executive meeting, not knowing what the subject matter is. And secondarily, when we vote to go into executive session, we are in fact saying in a very real way that those matters we plan to discuss do in fact comply in our best judgment with Sunshine Law. Without something like this, you can't really give informed approval that we are working within the Sunshine Law accommodations. And there are also mechanisms in there for a commissioner to object and to have those objections noted, so that we are trying to eliminate any squashing of dissenting opinions. So that's, I think, something that is positive. Number F was something we'd passed earlier. Obviously, the meetings are in compliance with Sunshine Law. On our, when we get to the next section, which is, I think, 30.224, it's basically the order of the commission agenda. We have a consent agenda that is defined later, and I'll deal with that when we get to it. And we have our regular session, so we've moved the order around. I have taken out, I'm proposing that we take out comments on agenda items. To me, it's redundant, and I got to tell you, as long as I'm sitting in this chair, and I think that the other two commissioners are also committed to this, and that is, we want to hear from our citizens. And the time, the impactful time to hear on a subject is when that subject is under discussion. So when we're discussing these things, that is the appropriate time, that is most impactful time for a citizen to make their opinions known or their questions. The way the agenda is set up at the moment, that means you get to make your comments or ask your questions after we've taken a vote. That strikes me as not productive and, quite honestly, slightly disrespectful of our citizens. We have added county administrator comments. That was something that we'd had previously, and I think that's a constructive thing to do, is to give the administrator the opportunity to report anything that is of importance and that needs to be made public. And then, of course, commissioner comments is also there, so that commissioners are able to make comments on issues that they see as important. Then we have eliminated B, which is basically an outline of the invocation. It strikes me that this is something that is unnecessary because of the fact that we pretty much have our invocation down. It seems unnecessary to go into that kind of detail. We just leave that in the capable hands of our administrator. And also it allows for a guest to possibly do the invocation. If we have a minister come in who is visiting, it may well be appropriate to have that individual make the invocation. And then finally, the new B refers to the consent agenda. Those would be items that would be non-controversial in nature, that we could group together and vote for in a grouping. One of the things that we just did on our zoning was we grouped those together because those are like items and they really dealt with the same issue. The idea with the consent agenda is these would be items that had no controversy whatsoever attached to them. It also allows for any commissioner to have an issue removed from the consent agenda, and that would be then taken up in the regular agenda and go through that process. What I hope this does is it gets us through some of the more technical, more ministerial issues that we have to deal with. But once again, when we take up consent agenda, that would be the appropriate, that would be one of the times, obviously during approval of the agenda, for a commissioner to request that be moved to the regular agenda where the group would then vote on it. That would also, if a citizen had some question about why an item is on the consent agenda, that also would be appropriate for that citizen to make that observation. And then if a commissioner chose to remove it from the consent agenda for general consideration, that would be in order. So that is a little bit longer explanation than I had hoped I would make, but sometimes I get a little bit wordy, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that. I feel that this gives us the flexibility to go forward and do what we need to do to run meetings that are orderly and responsive to the considerations of what citizens expect from our government and the open government that we've been striving for. I'll go ahead and make my motion. I make the motion for the approval of 2021 Ordinance 1 with an effective date of March the 1st, 2021. That would give us some time to work through any other problems. With that, I will open it up for discussion. Would either of the commissioners care to add or make any observations? Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'll just reiterate my remarks from last week, which is I'm very grateful for this. I've been reading over these proposed changes the last couple weeks. They look good to me, and look forward to supporting it. I think, these will be better practices for conducting these meetings and running county government. And so for me, it's just some good government, and I look forward to supporting it. I think we had a brief discussion last week about the timing of the meetings and my preference for doing them in the evening. I do agree that probably 6 makes more sense than 7 for a number of reasons. So it's still my preference that we would do them all in the evening. I think for consistency and for accessibility purposes. That being said, I don't think it's the biggest thing in the world. So in the spirit of collaboration and compromise, I'm happy to go back and forth if that's what we want to do, and look forward to supporting these proposed changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. I appreciate the comments. Something that I want to point out is that I've tried to write this in as flexible a manner possible so that if we, as a commission, as we work through in collaboration with the citizens, if we seem to be building towards a consensus to where we change some of these things, we should be able to do it without having to go in and change ordinance, but just react more flexibly to what citizen needs are. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, thank you. I agree completely. I think these are some good government changes that we are needing to put into effect. I feel very comfortable with all this. I think just coming back to deciding on when we're going to have our meetings, I received a lot of response from citizens over the past week since we've met. I do think that we probably need to keep in our mind that we need to have at least one day. I'm going to be louder again. There you go. At least one day meeting for the citizens that can't be here in the evenings. But I think moving forward, we can probably come up with a time that'll work for everybody. And I would recommend maybe we do these a little closer to 5 o'clock as we can. I'm just thinking of also for staff, keeping costs low, and for other office holders and department heads. They're going to need to be able to get in and get out as well. But also just making sure we save the county money so they're not having a lot of overtime. So we can discuss that with our county administrator, how we want to make sure that they are properly compensated, and if we need to do comp time or whatever needs to be done there. But all the basic changes here, I feel very comfortable with.
Thank you. And I do think that one of the reasons I want to make this a March 1st start is I thought what we might do would be to have our next meeting may well be a day meeting, and then maybe have an evening meeting for our last one, just to kind of get a feel to see how it goes before we actually start putting it into practice so that we can get a little bit of a road test on it. One of the things that I think recommends itself for day meetings, because I think a proper balance, I think, is a positive thing. We'll see if it works out that way, but for instance, when we have someone who is here for a business interest, they can come during the daytime during their business hours, and that gives it a little bit more of an opportunity for them to be able to accommodate the schedule better. Also, it's my anticipation, although certainly circumstances will dictate, but I would anticipate that most of our executive sessions would be daytime because citizens are not able to be privy to those meetings, and so making them in the evening accessible to citizens seems to be rather pointless. So that allows us to have maybe the more extensive time. The other thing I like about having 2 different meetings is there are citizens in this county who work night shifts and would be able to do this. Also, some of our seniors, and I'm getting into that category a little more quickly than I would like, may not be as comfortable driving after dark. So I think the idea of having both day and evening meetings and then just kind of seeing how it works. Maybe we revisit this issue in several months and just see if it needs to be tweaked. Hopefully, we can tweak those by getting with the administrator and having him just take actions that would adjust it, and this is flexible enough to allow for that kind of latitude. Are there any comments from anyone else, from staff or from the public? Seeing none, please call the roll.
You make the motion, right?
Oh, yes, I did make the motion. I made the, by the way, just to restate the motion. I made the motion for the motion, not the emotion. The motion for the approval of 2021 Ordinance 1 to take effect March 1, 2021.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes?
Thank you. That brings us to, there we go. That concludes, oh, no, excuse me, we do have one more. That is our new item, 2021-46. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, item 2021-46 is to approve the attached designation of authorized county representatives on a signature document for UMB Bank.
Mr. Counselor, I think this was yours, so if you'd
It
like
is.
to give us a little bit of a summary on that, please.
Yeah, just to restate what I said earlier, this is essentially, what you can think of this as the signature card for the bank. Our current designation has nobody on it, as my understanding, who actually still works for the county. So I would call this mostly a procedural or ministerial change. I did change, there were assistant commissioner or assistant administrators on the old one. I changed it to put the 3 commissioners, the county administrator and the county clerk. I think that is in keeping with, prior precedent and the kind of the requirements of the COP funds. So again, this will help us process payments that are currently pending and currently due, that are, some of which are overdue, and hopefully move that forward. But it does not change anything else that we're doing as far as the COP money that we've already discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Counselor. Are there any questions? And if not, is there a motion on 2021-46?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve 2021-46.
Motion is made for the approval of 2021-46. Discussion. Something I would like to point out is these are obviously attached to the certificate of participation bonds, and those are certainly related to the proposed county annex, which has had some controversy and no little discussion around it. Something that I think is worth stating is that, as far as I know, everyone whose name is on this has certainly some concerns, some questions that they feel they would like to have answered at a minimum. The reason I say that is I don't want the idea out there that we're all of a sudden going to see a spate of COP expenditures signed off on that are not absolutely necessary to keep the county from accruing penalties or other negative consequences. So this is, I don't anticipate anyone on that list making any fresh expenditures without the expressed approval of the commission. While that's not a necessity, those names that appear on there certainly strike me as falling into the category of not kind of going off the reservation and signing a bunch of authorizations. Further discussion? Commissioner Thompson?
No, I'm good.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there any comments from anybody on staff or anybody from the public?
Just one more quick comment. If
Yes.
the 5 of you at this table are the 5 people listed, if everybody could sign where it says signature before you leave today, that'll help us get it to the bank.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and it is something clearly that needs to be dealt with, regardless of how you feel about the COP issue. With that, it is Commissioner Carpenter's motion. If you would care to comment or close,
Very good, I close.
please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Thank you. That concludes the commission session part of our agenda. That brings us to discussion items. There are none listed. Brings us to comments on agenda items. Those would be items that we have discussed and appear on our agenda, including the one issue that was added. Are there any public comments on any of the issues that we have discussed today? Seeing none. Are there any commissioner comments on the agenda items we discussed today? Seeing none. Are there any office holders who would like to comment on any of the issues that we had discussed today? Seeing none. Are there any agencies that would like to comment? Seeing none. And once again, I will repeat the call if there are any public comments on issues that we have discussed today. Very well. That moves us to comments on non-agenda items. Those comments would be in order that would be on issues that we did not discuss today and did not appear on our agenda. With that, I will ask, are there any comments from the public on items that did not appear on today's agenda? Seeing none. Are there any commissioner comments on any of the on any non-agenda items for today? Okay. Seeing none. Are there any office holders who would like to comment on issues that did not appear on today's agenda? And I see our treasurer rising to go to the podium. Please proceed.
Yes, Commissioners. Bob Nance, Treasurer for Clay County. I know that you as the Commissioners have received this information, but I want to be sure the public understands sales tax is very important to us. We've received January and February distribution from the state. We are up $7,000 over last year on sales tax. Our use tax is still very high. It was $564,000 higher than previously. And I just want you to know that, and that things are going fairly good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Any questions or anything? Very well. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Are there any other office holders who would like to comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none. Are there any agencies who would like to comment on non-agenda items? Mr. Administrator?
Just, you may want to also point out that the courthouse offices are also closed tomorrow for a holiday as well,
Oh, thank you.
as well
Yes.
as Monday.
I did neglect that. Yes, in addition to being, because we're closed Monday as well, but we are also closed on Friday. Lincoln's birthday, the President Lincoln's birthday. So if you have business to do with the county, I'm afraid that we'll do it today, or you'll need to wait till Tuesday or thereafter. So thank you for reminding me that. I was kind of focused on the Monday date. Appreciate that.
You're welcome to come in more.
Be very lonely. I'll be the Maytag repairman. And I will go back again. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none. That brings us to approval of minutes of previous sessions. We have in our packets the previous session minutes that we will need to approve. I will give commissioners a moment to review if they would like. I do want to point out to the public that these minutes are in fact distributed in advance, so commissioners had reviewed these prior to coming into the meeting. I'd like to extend the courtesy of having any last minute perusals, but I didn't want you to think that we were just glancing at them and voting them in, but that they had in fact already been submitted to the commission for their review. With that, we can, and just by way of information, unless there is something controversial, we can either approve each of these in turn, or we can approve them as a group. Mr. Counselor, do you have a particular preference on that?
I think you can certainly do them as a group. Obviously, if anybody has a change or doesn't want to, approve one of them, you could certainly ask that one be separated. But certainly, if everyone's okay with them, they can be approved in one motion.
I'll be prepared to accept a motion on whichever alternative a commissioner would like to make a motion related to.
I'll make the motion to approve January 12th, January 13th, January 14th, and January 20th commission meeting minutes.
I'm sorry, did you say January 12th at the beginning?
I did.
Okay, I didn't quite catch that one.
All of them, yes.
Thank you very much. A motion has been made for the approval of minutes of sessions related to January 12, 2021, 9:30 a.m., January 13, 2021, 1 p.m., January 14, 2021, 9:30 a.m., and January 2021, January 20, 2021, 10 a.m. Is there any discussion? Okay, I didn't see anything. Yes, Mr. Administrator.
Commissioner, just one thing of note, I think it's probably worthy of pointing out that each and every one of these hearings, or each and every one of these meetings were public hearings relative to the 2021 Clay County budget, something that's fairly rare in the past, and I think that's worth pointing out.
I think that's a very good observation, Mr. Administrator, that we had obviously a number of meetings in succession, by and large. In fact, I think those meetings were fairly dedicated to the budget process, which we just completed ahead of schedule, thanks to staff, thanks to the administrator, and certainly thanks to Mr. Sirks and the budget team that we assembled, which included Treasurer Nance and Auditor Hurlbert. So we certainly appreciate the hard work that is reflected in the notes in the minutes that we have, although they don't really do justice to the immense work that was done by a number of people within county government. Further discussion? If you'd like to close, Commissioner Thompson,
I close.
please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to written reports. I believe we have had some written reports submitted, and I think we might have something from our auditor if he's going to be speaking. Are you going to want to speak on the... Let's go ahead and, while you're making your way up, we'll go ahead and take care of the ones that were submitted by the clerk. So you've submitted some
Yes,
reports.
On your desk in front of you, I submitted...
Go ahead and use your microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Sandy, Clay County Clerk. I gave each one of you a copy of the 2018 and 2019 outside audit from Cochran Head Vick accounting firm.
For those who are not aware of it, governmental subdivisions are required to do annual outside reports. Those reports did not go as smoothly as we had hoped at the county for the years 18 and 19. And one of the people who has taken point on making sure we righted this situation has been our county auditor, Mr. Hurlbert. If you would like to give us a little bit of an outline on what's in that report, just so we kind of have it out and on the public record.
Yes, thank you, Commission. This is Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. And yes, we received final reports for our financial statements 2018 and 2019, as well as single audits. Because we received federal dollars over $750,000, we're required to have what's called a single audit. And so, as Commissioner Nolte alluded to, those were delayed by the previous administration for 2018. We lost a lot of grant money as a result in the sheriff's office. So we're glad that they're finally now complete. The 19 as well had some issues with the last administration, so we're glad we've got them through. And they're important not only for grants, but for some of our debt obligations, some of our COPs that were mentioned. And so I just want to say thanks to our outside auditors, Cochran Head and Vick. We have a good, positive working relationship now, and it is an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is always something good we look for. They had some good recommendations, and my office is now going to take the lead on making sure we adhere to those recommendations as far as year-end closing procedures. We just need to make sure we have good communication. Before we had not very good communication and some inefficiencies, as well as issues going back from 2016 and 2017 dealing with accounting in the Road and Bridge Fund. And those were corrected as the audits detail in 2019. So now it's just making sure we have that efficiency and communication going forward on year-end closing procedures, and we're going to be starting on the 2021 right now. A typical year time frame, these are supposed to be due by the end of June on a calendar year for a county such as an entity such as us, and then posted to federal websites by September 30th. For 2019, that was delayed because of COVID, in 2018, we were late. So now we're going to get back on a normal timeline to make sure these are done in a proper manner. So that's really about all I have. These do need to be accepted and approved by the commission, so this is really the way of doing that as essentially your audit for the commission and for the county for grant requirements as well as otherwise. So that's really all I have. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We'd certainly want to thank you for the work you did in putting this together, you and your staff, of course. I do want to mention that there is a timeliness in our acceptance of this report as far as our outside audit goes, and to be in compliance with some of the guidelines put on us by and related to our credit rating. So I would ask that we get at least a verbal consensus from the commission that we are ready to go forward with submitting this, and then following the meeting, we will get with council and see if there is any actual documentation that we need to adhere to. But this is not a vote of the commission. This is just a sense of consensus that this is the direction that we need to go and that we will be going forward with it. Hopefully that will fulfill some of the requirements as far as our reporting back on this particular issue. And the other thing that I would like to say is that as we go forward in reviewing and possibly adopting some of the recommendations in those reports from our outside auditors, certainly I'm sure that the administrator will be more than happy to interface with your office, bringing the commission in at the appropriate moment to review any recommendations that should come before us. But want to make sure that we are continuing what we've begun this year, and that is a protocol where office holders can feel absolutely free to come to the county administration and to the commission with any suggestions or thoughts on how we make this government run more efficiently. Okay. Commissioner Carpenter, did you are you good with what Mr. Herbert's forwarded?
Could I ask our auditor a couple questions?
Sure. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. First of all, thank you for this. Appreciate it. Very grateful for all your work on this and other things as well. So just a couple of quick questions. One is, are there any essentially top line scoring or metrics that are associated with this in terms of, did we get a good rating, a bad rating, that sort of thing? And then the second question is, in terms of the recommended adjustments or changes in order to have best practices going forward, you mentioned, some of those are changes that you can make on your end. Are there changes that need to come through the commission or that you would recommend that we need to participate in terms of implementing those best practices?
Sure, yes. So I'll speak to, as far as rating, this one, we have to be real clear because this type of audit under government auditing standards is it's really what we call a financial statement audit. It's not like with the state audit or what my office will do sometimes with a performance type audit, where we're looking more at the efficiencies, compliance type issues to a large degree of an entity of Clay County, of the government. Financial statements are really, especially under Single Audit Act, are looking at, are the financial statements fairly presented? And so with the unmodified opinion of what they gave to us, they're basically saying, yes, they are fairly presented as prepared by the county. So that's a good thing. It could be, modified, it could be no opinion. It could be a negative opinion. So that's a good rating in the terms of a single audit type finding. Now they did note some what we call material weaknesses, not saying that the financial statements aren't fairly presented, but just some recommendations, and those deal with, as I spoke to. We had one office doing one part and then my office doing another part, and because of a barrier of communication, things weren't happening in a timely fashion. So as far as to the question of what my office can do, now working with those individuals, we can get that all on the same page and make sure it's done appropriately. Now, Other than that, I would say for administration side, there was, and I believe that's been sent to you in transmittal, required communications to the commission. They'd made a note, I thought that was pretty relevant, and I've even spoke to this before, about purchasing guidelines. In fact, the first audit I did when I started in 2019, I talked about just some recommendations I noticed of thinking about, we will discuss who, X amount of vendors bid and this vendor won, but we don't really show who bid, what those amounts were, like the proof. So that was something I kind of thought, that was my own audit. And so and historically, I believe counties even outlined that in a better way. So that was something I had, and then this audit had in your communication to commissioners, besides the issues I mentioned discussed for going out to bid in particular regarding the annex. They did mention the idea of thoroughly following Clay County ordinances as far as when you do an RFP for professional services. They talked about the number on the committee, and they had concerns about that when that was done for the annex RFP professional services. So they just said going forward, make sure that we have the right amount of people on that committee for the RFP. So I guess that's more of a procedural thing I think they mentioned apart from the financial statements that they recommended, which we agree with, absolutely. So,
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And Jerry kind of mentioned, or Commissioner Nolte, presiding Commissioner Nolte mentioned that, in terms of maybe some communication with you and our county administrator, just in terms of if there are, a list of things that we can do as a commission and, in order to have best practices going forward and, do as well as we can on these future audits, then obviously, I think we would all probably be interested in taking those recommendations. So
appreciate it.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Thompson, did you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
No questions today, just thank you for your work and getting these to us, and I'm looking forward to having some little light reading over the weekend, so.
So do I have consensus of the commission to forward the comments that the auditor has put to our outside auditor? Is there consensus that we proceed? I see a head nod from Commissioner Thompson. Yep. And Commissioner Carpenter also agrees, so therefore, I believe we're ready to proceed on that. Does that get you what we need to go forward, Mr. Auditor?
I think that's sufficient, and I'll speak with council, and like you said, we want to make sure council would agree too, but yeah, I think that's necessary for what we can pass on, so yeah.
Great, yes, so council will follow up with us on any documentation required to make sure that we get that process completed as soon as possible. Thank you. Are there any other written reports to be submitted to the commission? Okay, I see none. That brings us to executive sessions. Our agenda was amended to put us to go into executive session under contractual, which is Missouri Statute 610.021, parentheses 12. Is there a motion related to going into executive session and to adjourn therefrom?
I move that we go into executive session and adjourn therefrom.
Motion has been made to go into executive session. Discussion? Seeing none. Commissioner Carpenter, you close?
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Yes?
Thank you. We will now go into executive session under contractual 610.021, parentheses 12, and adjourn therefrom. Thank you very much.